than 90 seconds unless you feed it. The actual physiological response, the chemical flood, naturally dissipates in just 90 seconds. The problem isn't the emotion itself. It's the stories we attach to it that keep the circuit firing long after the initial wave has passed. This isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's about building an emotional operating system that gives you back control. We're going to look at 3 psychological rules that transform your relationship with emotional chaos. The 90-second reset creates space, cognitive reframing changes your perspective, and building anti-fragility gives you lasting capacity. This is the fastest way to get your power back. The 90-second reset rule. This principle comes from the research of Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. When you have a reaction to something in your environment, there's a 90-second chemical process that happens in your body. Chemicals flush through your system, putting you on full alert. For those chemicals to totally flush out, it takes less than 90 seconds. After that, any remaining emotional response is you choosing to stay in that emotional loop by the thoughts you're thinking. Think about the last time you snapped at someone and regretted it moments later. By the time you realized what happened, the raw emotion had already begun to fade. What kept it going was the thought loop you started telling yourself about why you were justified or what it meant about you. The difference between experiencing an emotion and suffering from it is this gap. Suffering happens when you mistake the temporary chemical event for a permanent state of being. But the real secret to emotional control isn't willpower. It's a tiny fixed window of time that neuroscience has proven you can exploit. The question is, what happens in those 90 seconds, and how do you hijack the process? So how do you use this? Next time you feel anger rising or anxiety tightening, try this instead of reacting. First, notice the physical sensations without judgment. Is there heat in your face? Tension in your shoulders? Pressure in your chest? Just observe them. Don't fight the feeling. Then, simply count to 90 while breathing. Inhale, exhale, and watch the wave of sensation pass through you. You'll feel the physical intensity subside as the chemicals flush out. Imagine you get cut off in traffic. The initial surge of anger is the chemical flush. You feel the heat, the grip on the wheel. Instead of immediately leaning on the horn, you pause. You count to 90. By the time you reach 60, the heat is gone. The anger is still there, but it's no longer a physical compulsion. It's just a thought you can choose to ignore. Why does fighting emotions make them stronger? It's the paradox of acceptance. When you resist what you're feeling, you create internal conflict. That conflict adds more energy to the system, like struggling in quicksand. But when you allow the sensation to be there, to observe it with curiosity instead of fear, it loses its power over you. You're not agreeing with the thought that triggered it. You're simply acknowledging the physiological event. This single act is how you stop being the passenger and start driving. The 90-second window is your emergency exit. This technique gives you space. But what you do with that space determines everything. That space is where your power lies. It's the moment between trigger and response where real choice becomes possible. Most people never find this gap because they're already fused with their emotional narrative. They are their anger, their anxiety. The 90-second rule shows you that you are not your emotions. You are the awareness that experiences them. Once you have that space, the next step is to change the story you tell yourself. Cognitive reframing, the observer's advantage. Most people are completely fused with their emotional narrative. They think, I am angry, as if anger defines their entire being in that moment. This fusion is what keeps you stuck. The way out is to create psychological distance, and the most powerful tool for this is so simple, it sounds like a joke. You just have to stop talking about yourself as I. Research shows that simply changing how you talk to yourself, from I to your name, activates the same brain regions you use when giving advice to a friend.
When you say, I can't handle this, you're fused with the feeling of overwhelm. But when you say, you can handle this, you activate your prefrontal cortex, the wise advisor part of your brain, rather than the emotional limbic system. This tiny linguistic shift gives you access to your own objectivity.
It's like having a personal coach who knows all your strengths available exactly when you need objective guidance. This is cognitive reframing. It's not positive thinking, it's accurate thinking that acknowledges difficulty while maintaining agency. This process is what psychologists call emotional granularity, the ability to make fine-grained distinctions in your feelings, moving you from a vague bad to a specific actionable emotion. Our brains are prediction machines, constantly creating expectations. Disappointment isn't caused by what happens to you, but by the gap between what you expected and what occurred. Reframing is how you close that gap without denying reality. Let's say you didn't get a promotion you wanted. The catastrophic frame is, I'm a failure, I'll never advance. This perspective closes doors and creates helplessness. A reframed perspective might be, this is one setback in my career journey. What specific feedback can I get to improve my chances next time? Notice how one perspective is a dead end, while the other opens up possibility. The frame you put around a problem determines whether you can solve it. Think of Thomas Edison. He didn't see 10,000 failed attempts to create the light bulb. He famously said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. That is not positive thinking. That is strategic reframing. He changed the frame from failure to data collection, which allowed him to keep moving. We've all had moments where something initially devastating later turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Reframing lets you access that perspective when you need it most, not years later. Your brain during emotional distress is like an overly dramatic movie director. You get criticized in a meeting, and suddenly it's tragic music. Your career is over. Meanwhile, everyone else has already moved on to thinking about lunch. My brain. Everyone at this meeting noticed that small mistake, and they're all silently judging my entire career. Reality. Everyone else is just wondering if they remembered to turn off their stove. The catastrophic frame feels true, but it's usually just a story your mind is telling based on limited information. The key is to separate the facts from the interpretation. The fact is, you didn't get the promotion. The interpretation is what that means about you, your future, your worth. Reframing questions the interpretation while staying grounded in the facts. It asks, what else could this mean? What's another way to look at this situation that's equally true but more useful? This isn't about fooling yourself. It's about expanding your perspective beyond the first, most alarming interpretation. Think about how easily you can see solutions for friends that they can't see for themselves. That's because you have psychological distance from their situation. Third-person self-talk and cognitive reframing give you that same distance from your own challenges. They turn down the volume on the emotional alarm system so you can hear the quieter voice of reason. Once you master observation, you can turn stress into strength. Building anti-fragility, the long game. You now have the space and the perspective. But to make this change permanent, you need a system that thrives on stress. But what if you could build a system that actually gets stronger from emotional challenges? This is anti-fragility. Resilience is about bouncing back to your original state. Anti-fragility is about growing more capable because of the stress you encounter. Your muscles don't grow by avoiding the gym. They develop through the stress of lifting weights. Your emotional capacity works the same way. Resilience is a rubber band snapping back. Anti-fragility is a muscle tearing and growing back stronger. The difference is between avoiding all stress and introducing voluntary, controlled discomfort. This expands your window of tolerance. Think of it like a vaccine, a small, managed exposure that builds your system's ability to handle the real thing. Start small. Take a cold shower for 30 seconds. Have a difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Practice fasting for a day. A powerful form of voluntary discomfort is intentionally seeking brutal feedback. Most people run from criticism, but you can build anti-fragility by asking a trusted mentor to give you the most honest, painful critique of your work they can. You are voluntarily exposing your ego to a controlled stressor, which strengthens your capacity to handle unexpected, harsh criticism later on. These are calculated stressors that build your capacity to handle unexpected challenges. The Stockdale paradox, sustainable hope. The obstacle isn't in your way, it is the way. But how do you maintain that faith when the challenge lasts for years? The answer comes from the most brutal test of human endurance. What did the prisoners of war who survived years of captivity know that the others didn't? This connects to the Stockdale paradox, confronting the most brutal facts of your current reality while maintaining unwavering faith that you will prevail in the end. It's the discipline to acknowledge genuine difficulty without falling into despair. Avoiding all stress doesn't make you safe. It makes you more vulnerable to the first unexpected shock. Anti-fragility transforms your relationship with challenges. Instead of seeing stress as something to avoid, you recognize it as the stimulus for growth. Think about your proudest achievements. They likely came from periods of significant challenge, not comfort. You've already experienced anti-fragility. Small, consistent practices compound into an unshakable foundation. Create systems with redundancy, multiple ways to achieve important goals, so no single point of failure can derail you. This is how you build a life that benefits from disorder. Conclusion. So that's the system. These aren't separate tricks. They're parts of an integrated emotional operating system. The 90-second rule creates the space to choose your response. Cognitive reframing changes your perspective from a dead end to a detour. Building anti-fragility turns life's inevitable stressors into fuel for growth. Your power isn't in avoiding emotional storms, but in learning to navigate them with skill. Don't try to implement all three at once. Start with the smallest possible win, the 90-second rule. The next time you feel a strong emotion, don't try to fix it or fight it. Just name it and count to 90. That single, small act is the foundation of your new emotional operating system. It's the first step to getting your power back.